Welcome, everybody, and we are continuing our getting to know key Backfit Pro personnel. And it's my real pleasure, honor to introduce my good friend, Joel Proskewitz, who is a master clinician in Backfit Pro, all for good reason, and you're going to learn why. He's an outstanding instructor of all what we do. He's an outstanding clinician. We have sent him some very complex back pain cases, and we'll get into some of those stories as we proceed. So, Joel, what I thought we would do to start is tell us a little bit about yourself before we ever met. Set the stage a little bit.
Sure, Prof. Well, firstly, thank you very much for giving me this honor. It's amazing to sit here and share my story with you and the rest of the listeners. So before we met, which was actually back in 2006 in the UK, previous to that, my life was based in South Africa. And I grew up very much involved in the world of martial arts and strength training. And I started my life off doing traditional karate. And I then got into strength training to assist my, what I thought at that stage was to make me a better martial artist. And I now realize that that's not the truth. And through that, I naturally picked up a significant amount of injuries. The worst one being I actually fractured my spine. However, amongst all of this, I became a certified strength coach, and I opened up, along with my business partner, the very first personal training gym in Johannesburg, South Africa. And that was way back in about 1996. And I got involved in working with orthopedic surgeons and looking after post-operative rehabilitation, specifically with the knee and shoulder, funny enough. And as I got more involved in the industry and in the game, I was really seeking out a resolution for my own back pain, which was becoming more disabling as the years went on. And I just couldn't find an optimal resolution until one day my business partner had come back from an NSCA conference in the United States. I couldn't go that year. And he said, Joel, I've just heard the best keynote speaker I've ever heard. And he said, I bought you his book. And he threw down on my table the very first edition of Low Back Disorders. And that was my very first introduction to you and to Backfit Pro. And 2 years later, I immigrated to London, UK, with my wife, and you and I, or at least I had the honor of meeting you at the end of 2006. So
I remember that meeting. And then wasn't it in Scotland, I think, at another meeting, Edinburgh perhaps, or was it still in London? I'd put on a course, I met you, and we agreed to meet out on a park bench in a park. Correct. Afterwards.
Was that in Scotland?
That was in Scotland.
Yeah.
And as you know, after finishing up a conference, you're dead tired. But what I recognized was a humanist, someone who had real logic to his thought. And we had such a wonderful evening talking about spiny things, martial arts, how we move, the science that governs it all. And I also picked up your ability to read people, which is key. And well, maybe you want to describe a little bit of that and perhaps get into your journey after that day, because sure. That was the beginning of your association with Backfit Pro.
Very much so, and it's a standout moment in my life, actually. And so that course in Scotland was about 2 or 3 months after we had originally met in London, because you were here in London for an orthopedics conference, actually. And when we then met up in Scotland, we sat and, we had a beer on the park bench and we spoke about a whole host of things. And it was interesting because martial arts played a significant role in that conversation, because it's my background in martial arts that really taught me how to read people. As you know, you've delved in the martial arts and you've dabbled in it a little bit. And you get to understand that when you get onto a jiu-jitsu mat or a karate mat, they put someone in front of you, and it really is a poker game, because you don't quite know who that person is, and you've got to pick up cues in their body language, how they present themselves, to understand the person whom you are either sparring with or working with. And that has really it put me in a good position to truly empathize and recognize different individuals when they come and see me for low back pain. And this is something that you have always highlighted when you teach, and that it is about pattern recognition and understanding the person in front of you. Because what I've learned from you, Stu, is that you can have all the skills in the world, but if you don't know the person in front of you, if you don't know how to adapt to their learning ability or what they need, it doesn't set you up for success if you don't know that person.
Yes. Well, this is the listeners will be picking up some of these cues and key features. You became an instructor with us, and an outstanding instructor. You get fabulous reviews. I've never seen a bad teaching review, actually, for you. You do a much better job than I do.
Well,
when we would get together and I would come over to London, I would teach you how to read MRI images. Again, from a perspective of, here you are as a traditionally non-medically trained person, but you have this aptitude for movement and mechanics and knowing that something is not functioning quite properly in the linkage, and you know where to look. Now you are the only person in the world who's a non-medic who has MRI ordering privileges. Yeah, tell us about that whole process and how that incredible honor came about.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. And I think I'm going to go back and just give the listeners a bit of context, because, when you and I first got together, I truly did not know how to read an MRI at all. And I'll never forget, through our many times that we had met in person, either me coming to your courses or you coming to London, you had shown me a lot about reading and looking for things, the non-obvious things in scans, which are seemingly more important than the obvious things. And I'll never forget, there was one night we were in Canada together, and we were sitting in our hotel room, and we spent hours. I started opening up all these MRI scans, and I think we started at like 10 o'clock at night, and we ran on for like 2 hours or 3 hours, where you and I went through every scan, and you showed me so many things, so many sort of discoveries that I would have never, ever been able to recognize. And like everything else in my life, Stu, I became obsessed. I think it's my obsession about getting really good at things that drove me to really understand imaging. And I sought out here in the UK many different radiologists, and I privately worked with them, and I got them to teach me about how they look at scans. And in actual fact, quite a lot of them didn't show me as many interesting things as you did, because they're working via the textbook. So it was the combination of learning from them traditionally and from learning from you and how you see things that really got me to understand scans. And then I went from understanding MRs to X-rays to CTs to SPECT CTs. And again, it was the obsession of really understanding those images and the importance of correlating the images and the assessment, the mechanical assessment, and putting all of that together as useful information for the patient and empowering the patient, that really drove me to study that side of things significantly. And then a few months back, I actually can't even remember the timeline now. It's probably about 5 or 6 months ago. I was given the honor of being able to have full radiology rights here in the United Kingdom. So I can send clients and patients for SPECT CTs, for CT scans, for MRIs. And I have to say that the amount of effort that you put into helping me understand all of these scans really played a significant role. So that's where I am now.
It's so interesting. Over the years, as we ran the laboratories and experimental clinic at the university, we would take cadaver specimens, image them, and then insult them with very specific loads, create very specific injuries, and then image them again. So we would get a one-to-one match of features seen on a scan with patterns of causation. And the radiologists never received this training. They would just see a feature, and furthermore, they never see the patient. So the position that you're in seeing patients and understanding their pain triggers, and then you're able to much more effectively match the features, which may or may not have anything to do with the dominant pain pattern, and they get thrown a red herring with
Absolutely.
With a scan report. We are now in a post-COVID world, and we've all had to adapt. And what we did, we were together on the road. How many years have we been on the road together? Is it 8 or 9 or 10?
Yeah,
I've lost track. Teaching.
somewhere around there.
And what COVID taught us is there's no longer a need for me to stand up in front of people and give a lecture. It's just as effective to do it either online or on a Jumbotron screen. But what is important is that you, coupled with Ed Cambridge, our two instructors at Backfit Pro, to teach the nuances of the hands-on skills. When you palpate a spine and you apply pressure on something that is sensitive, and the person has a spasm, a neurological reaction, how do you feel that and interpret it, and then use all those findings to create a unique, customized approach to get them A, to desensitize, and B, build up a capability of pain-free movement. So I'm looking forward to this new way of doing business. You and Ed, you young men, will be able to go to different locations and teach a full day of these hands-on skills.
Absolutely, Prof. And it's very important because, you know, what we've realized with COVID is absolutely we can teach the theory and use, you know, platforms like Zoom and all these wonderful technologically advanced platforms to share information and knowledge. But at the end of the day, nothing can substitute for that real hands-on learning and sort of the understanding of the subtleties of how to do things. People need that, and people, I suppose, also COVID has made people realize the importance of having these in-person courses. And one thing, you know, I've got to realize, even as just a clinician now, is the more I do the assessments here in my facility, just the better I get at doing it, which I'm sure is, I think you said something, Stu, that has stuck with me forever. You said the best assessment that you will do is the last assessment that you'll do. And, you know, it's
well, I was just going to say, you're right. I too get better with every assessment,
yeah,
because the client or the patient is a person to study, and you learn something from that study almost every single time.
of course, of course.
Well, it's been fabulous, for me to see you. I love every minute that we're together. And also for folks to hear your story, and to hear about some of the fabulous skills that you have to pass on, your wonderful teaching reviews.
Thank you.
And I'll look forward to the next time. But anyway, thanks so much for doing this.
I appreciate it, Prof. And thank you very much. And thank you for everything that you've contributed to the world of spines. It really has been industry changing. And it's a great honor for to allow me to be able to continue what you've this wonderful journey that you've started. So thank you very much.
Wow. I would have said exactly the same thing about you. So thank you for your passion and skills, and what you've added to this whole enterprise of changing people's lives.
Thank you very much.
So long, Joel. Thank you.
Bye-bye.